1972, the frenzy of an oil rush in Peru. Just 3 years ago, they were calling this the Amazon oil boom. In 1971, Occidental Petroleum and Peru's state-owned company Peru both struck oil, and from then the rush was on. As many as 29 foreign oil companies scrambled to pay million-dollar sums for drilling rights here in the remote Peruvian rainforest. By 1972, the Peruvian government had parceled out concessions covering 62,500 square miles of the Amazon jungle. With an eye to the future, the government also made certain of a partnership in all foreign operations, and later in the year, Peru gave out figures which seemed to promise the country a big share of one of the world's most sought-after commodities. Peru announced production goals of 200,000 barrels a day for 1976, 500,000 by 1980 and 750,000 by 1987. Confidently, the Peruvian government talked of taking on a new role as a major oil exporter and opened up negotiations with Japan to help make the scheme possible. For a stake in the oil project, Japan agreed to help finance a giant pipeline to carry the vast resources of crude oil from the jungle rigs over the Andes to the coast. The pipeline is rapidly becoming a reality, but the euphoria which surrounded the scheme has vanished. For the early strikes haven't been repeated. Many of the later holes have come up dry, and most of the original investors are pulling their rigs up and their cash out. Since Peru's early strikes, no foreign oil company has found a commercially productive well, though they've stepped up their drilling. The 17 holes drilled in the past year have all been plugged. Most were dry. Others contain very low-grade crude, similar to tar. But still the mammoth pipeline project goes on. Until now, work's concentrated on driving a road through the dense forest to bring in supplies and material. This in itself is a major task, though the first stage is running to schedule. The route of the pipeline to the coastal port of Bayova runs for over 530 miles, parallel to the Marañón River, and if everything goes according to plan, it'll be complete by the middle of next year. Even as progress continues, more gloomy news is coming in from the jungle. Of the 16 original concession holders, 7 have found either dry holes or tar. Of 5 other blocks currently being drilled, 4 are, so far, coming up dry. With so little success, most companies are cutting back operations, while those which haven't yet begun may choose to pay a government fine rather than go ahead with costly and pointless exploration. But sections are still being floated upriver for the pipeline scheme. All pipe and heavy machinery comes in this way, pushed by barge up the entire length of the Amazon before being transshipped from Iquitos up the Marañón River. Originally estimated to cost some $240 million, the pipeline scheme's final bill is now expected to be nearer 2.5 times as much, perhaps 635 million. But despite the apparent failure of oil finds, the government has no plan to back out and cut its losses. The Peruvian Minister for Energy and Mines and other high-ranking government spokesmen continually insist that the pipeline will go on. The minister, General Jorge Fernandez Maldonado, has said that if oil production were to fall even more dramatically, the pipeline might be used to carry water to irrigate the country's coastal desert. In fact, the pipeline's totally unsuitable for the job. It's oil or nothing, and increasingly, it looks destined to carry nothing. In the face of all the facts, Peru's still clinging to its claim that it's almost ready to join the League of Major Oil Producers, and with this in mind, they're pressing their contractors to stick to their construction schedules. When we visited camps along the route this month, we were told the first pipes would soon be laid. The work's in the hands of a North American firm from Houston in the heart of the Texas oil country. But the pipeline's given jobs to local men too. Ranks of mobile homes have been set up to house 600 Peruvians working in shifts to prepare the way through virgin forest. The bulk of the construction cost of the pipeline's been borne by the Japan Development Corporation, but they're sure to get their money back. Part of the financial agreement calls for Peru to supply Japan with more than 150 million barrels of crude and more than 102 million barrels of refined petroleum products at the world's going rate. But those firm commitments to the Japanese amount to more than half of the reserve which Peru's likely to find in its jungles. The fact is that since explorations really got underway, it's been found that the total number of barrels Peru's likely to recover works out at some 450 million, and Peru's initial production targets now look hopelessly optimistic. It means that Peru's back to loser. Whichever way it's worked out, the country can look forward to a very short-term gain from what, just 3 years ago, looked like a giant oil bonanza. If Peru made the most of its oil find in the Amazon, it might be able to count on a production rate of 200,000 barrels a day, incidentally, the planned capacity of the pipeline. At that level, oil would flow for almost 6.5 years. But more realistic levels would yield Peru with a poor return for its massive investment. And at a rate of 750,000 barrels a day, the known reserves would be pumped dry in less than 2 years. Peru has said there's no point at which they would pull out of the pipeline project despite the discouraging results. But while the activity in the jungle goes on, the government's dream becomes daily less likely to be realized.